Hi everybody, it's Brent here, and this is the 21st of March 2021. It's a Sunday, and we're taking a flight from Charlottetown in eastern Prince Edward Island. Charlottetown is the main airport in the province of Prince Edward Island. It's located just north of the main city of Charlottetown, and as we zoom here a little bit, you'll see where the airport's located and the fact that it has two fairly long now intersecting runways of about 7,000 feet each. If we switch from a map view to a satellite view, you'll get a little better picture of what the airport looks like. And down in the lower left-hand corner, you're going to see a cluster of buildings that we call the General Aviation Gateway. We'll just put a little blue circle around that right now for you. The General Aviation Gateway is a cluster of hangars and a clubhouse and some other buildings that allow us to park our planes, get fuel, and do some things to support our general aviation hobby. And here is a closer shot of the General Aviation Gateway, and you'll see several rows of hangars, including a large, long, thin building that's what we call the T-hangars, where there's lots of planes in there, actually. And our hangar is that one that now has the blue circle around it, which is the middle one of those three hangars that are closest to Taxiway Alpha. So our flight today was just up over Prince Edward Island. We have not been up for quite some time. The main pilot is my next door neighbor Barry, and he took us up, or took me up, I guess, on a flight. I did a little bit of flying, but Barry did most of it. Barry hasn't flown for a couple of months, so he was eager to get back in the air, and today was an absolutely wonderful day here on Prince Edward Island. The sun was shining, the temperature was going up to about low 50s Fahrenheit. That's 10 or 11, 12 degrees on the centigrade scale, Celsius scale. I've sped this up a little bit just to save some time, but here we are walking to the hangar where inside is our 1978 Piper Warrior II. Now, I keep saying our because I still believe in some small way I have ownership here, but I really don't. I used to have a share in this airplane and in this hangar. But I sold my share a couple of years back, but I've still maintained pretty close connections with the partnership, all the other pilots who fly this particular plane, and particularly Barry, my next-door neighbor. And Barry will often give me a shout when he is going to be going for a flight and has a spare seat. So I'm quite happy to go whenever I can. I still maintain and retain all of my flying equipment. I have my own headset, logbook, that kind of thing, obviously, when I'm flying as pilot in command, which I have not done now, actually, for a couple of years. So our plane is located in a very nice hangar that we all built as a group several years ago, using our own labor for the most part. And it's a beautiful setup. We have two big, wide garage doors that open in the way you're seeing now. And what we have in between those garage doors is a post that actually is up on a series of tracks, and the post will move sideways, and that's the final job to do before you can actually push the plane out of the hangar. As you can see from the long shadows out on the pavement, it is early in the morning. The sun is still fairly low in the east. This is now about, I'd say about 9 o'clock local time in the morning here in the Atlantic Daylight Time Zone, now that we've switched to daylight saving time. And just a quick pan outside the hangar shows what else is going on. Oh yes, and we have to show you this. You'll see a figure walking away from that Cessna 172. And what's actually happening there is that figure is a flight instructor from our local flying school. And the airplane is running. There is a pilot inside the airplane. And because the instructor is walking away, this can mean only one thing. Yes, this is time for that student pilot's very first solo flight. So just after I shot this video, that Cessna 172 turned around, taxied back out to the runway, and took off for one single circuit in the sky. And then that actually christens that new student pilot. And it turns out to be a young fellow by the name of Tyler, who was in my ground school class a couple of years ago. So good for Tyler on getting his first solo. So, well, we're setting up. Tyler's now taken off probably by this point, so Barry is getting into the airplane. Piper aircraft, especially the single-engine variety, only have a door on the right-hand side, so the pilot has to get in first, and then there you see me getting my stuff all ready. You have to be very compact with your stuff when you get in the airplane because you can't reach too far for things. There's not a lot of room up there. It's pretty cramped. So here's the instrument panel and getting the thing all set and ready to go. We have done our run-up at this point. We've called to the tower and let them know that we're ready to go. And at this stage, Tyler has just actually landed from his first solo flight on the other runway. So here we are now pushing ahead to take off on runway 03, which is the northeast-facing runway here in Charlottetown. You can see the tower over there on the left-hand side. I have sped this video up as well, so the plane isn't going quite this fast in real life, but it's going fast enough. And as we go over the intersecting runway here, I pan down, and if you look carefully, you can see Tyler sitting there back on along one of those dotted lines waiting for us to take off and get out of the way. So that was Tyler's first taxi back in as a solo pilot, and he had to wait for us to take off to do it. So sorry to Tyler about that. But very good news to have Tyler now solo as well. And there's lots of activity at our airport, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. Barry and I did some flying over rural PEI. This is over an area called Donaldston, which is north of the airport. And then we crossed over a little inlet, and now we're doing a circle around the Glenaladale historical property. This is a very, very well-known and important historic property here in Prince Edward Island from our early Scottish settlers in the late 1700s. We also went over Cardigan. That's a shot of Cardigan here. And again, I'm moving things along pretty quickly with speed. You can see how beautiful PEI is, even in the wintertime. There's still a little bit of snow around, as you can see, but the snow should probably be mostly gone by the end of this week because we have some very mild temperatures and some sunny skies in the forecast essentially for all week long. So this is eastern PEI, looking down towards Georgetown, Cardigan, Montague, this area, looking out towards Nova Scotia actually. And now as we fly back in towards Charlottetown, we will eventually turn to the west. And I keep taking some video here and there just to see, or just to show, I guess, how nice PEI looks from the air. In this particular shot, I'm trying to keep the camera level with the horizon while the plane does all the turning, just to give you an idea of the bank angle sometimes that we use when we're in a tighter turn. Here we're just looking around. This is coming in over Stratford on our way back into Charlottetown. You can see the Hillsborough Bridge between Stratford and Charlottetown in the distance there. And we're just flying over the Bunbury area, soon to cross the Hillsborough River. Then we'll be making a right turn to join a left-hand downwind leg for runway 28. So that's the right turn that we're into now, flying up along the shoreline of the Hillsborough River and actually staying over the water for some of this as we get ready to line up with the runway and then give the plane a turn. And then a few minutes after that, here we are now. That's the shadow down on the ground, getting bigger and bigger as we descend down and get closer to the button of runway 28, which is our new lengthened runway. This piece we're landing on right now is actually fairly newly built. They added 2,000 feet to this runway in the last couple of years. So 28 is now a very, very preferred runway when there's nice westerly winds, as there were this morning on our flight. Barry had not flown for a couple of months, but his touchdown was immaculate. You could not hardly feel or hear anything different between the time when the plane was flying and when it was actually on the surface with the wheels. Now we're turning in from runway 21 through taxiway Charlie here, and this heads straight for the tower. If you've ever flown commercially, this is the taxiway you would normally come in, and there's the terminal building that you would go into. And this is, again, sped up really fast, but we've turned the airplane off now, and I've gone back to normal speed. I've already exited the airplane. Barry's now just getting his jacket ready. It's time to pay the fiddler. Airplanes don't fly on fumes. They need actual fuel, so we have 100 low-lead aviation gas that we have to put in the aircraft each time we come back. We have to top it up to the tabs, which is a little marker inside each wing tank that gives us a known quantity of fuel inside. We know we're going to have 18 gallons in each side of the airplane, which should give us 3 or 4 hours of flying time for the next person in the partnership who decides to take the airplane up for a little flip. One thing that I mentioned a minute ago was that our airport is pretty busy, and even though it's a fairly small airport and there's not a lot of commercial traffic going on right now, certainly there is lots of general aviation traffic. And here's another one of our friendly fellow pilots. His name is Andy, and he has a Diamond DA-40. Andy was up on a practice flight, or just a zipping around flight just like we were, and he took off a little after we did, I think, but he came back a little after as well. But he didn't stop at the pumps. He's just heading right into his hangar area right now. That's the same row that we will be going through to get our plane back and buttoned up in our hangar. Charlottetown is a really, really friendly airport to private pilots. And the fuel prices are a little high, I have to say, and they're a little high compared to the rest of the region, but they're still pretty decent. And the facilities that the Charlottetown Airport Authority have provided for private pilots in this area, we think are second to none. And we welcome pilots from all over Atlantic Canada and the United States and even other parts of Canada who want to visit us, typically in the better weather, in the spring, summer, and early fall. And we have lots of visiting aircraft in normal times. Now with COVID, things are a little bit different. Air traffic is certainly down somewhat, but in normal times, our airport ramp can be extremely busy and hard to find a parking spot, which is a great thing. So the Charlottetown Airport is still kicking and doing very well, and the private pilots in our PEI Flying Association are doing all that we can to keep things busy enough. And anytime it's a nice, decent day, as it is in this case today, we always try to get up. We as a group, I hardly ever get up these days, but we as an association, and there's about 30 to 40 members of the association, many of whom are active pilots. There are many planes in these hangars that are behind me now as I'm shooting this video. Barry has started the plane again and is now leaving the pumps after closing everything up and taking his key out of the card lock, or the key lock. Now, interestingly, I didn't know another plane was about to come back out here to go for a flight, but I catch it just at the last minute as Barry is turning in the little laneway here with the Warrior. I start to follow the plane, but then suddenly out of the corner of my eye, I see another Piper, a Cherokee 180, heading out for a flight of their own. And that's another couple of pilots in our group. There it is over there on the right. And I pick that up and follow it. And they go out and have a great flight of their own. We had actually left the airport before they returned, but I'm sure they had a nice smooth flight like we did. It was an absolutely beautiful day to go flying. The air was cool enough to give us good performance aerodynamically and with the engine, and it was also nice enough that we could really almost fly in our shirt sleeves. Even though you see snow around on the ground, it's actually not that cold anymore. By the time we arrive back here at the airport, we're well into the 40s on the Fahrenheit scale, and we're on our way up into the 50s at this point. So we came out nose first out of the hangar, so we have to push it back in tail first, and that's what we're about to do now. I sped it up a bit just to save you a little time, but we push the plane in, and then it's time, of course, to try to get those doors closed as quickly as we can, because even though the sun is out, as you can tell from the way our hangar faces to the west right now, the sun isn't shining inside and warming up the inside of our hangar, so we have to try to get those doors closed as quickly as we can to get the heat to come back on and warm up the hangar again a little bit. Another thing that's important for general aviation, and I guess all kinds of aviation, is the fact that we have to do the paperwork. So in this case it's Barry. He was the pilot in command. He fills out his logbook. He fills out the other logs that the plane has to have on board at all times to show how many hours it's been operating, and that tells us when we need to do servicing on the aircraft and so on. So once we're done, basically the plane sits there in its spot waiting for the next pilot to come along. We usually leave the cargo door open where the E is on the CFDME. It's just open ajar there. And the main door is also open to allow the next pilot to get in there. So then it's just a simple matter of walking back to the clubhouse outside on Apron 2, as we call it here in Charlottetown. You can see the tower in the distance there, popping in and out on the right-hand side. And straight ahead is that Cessna 172, which is the club plane, or sorry, the training plane that's used by the local flying school called Sea Eagle Aviation. And as we approach, you can see that there are a couple of other people on their way out. There's a new student, not sure who she is, a young lady who's getting in the pilot side. And there's Jagger, the flight instructor, and he's working his way out to get in to run this flight. And we end up talking to Jagger for a little while before they take off and share a little information. In fact, it was at this point that Jagger told us that it was Tyler who had done his first solo that day. So all in all, just a wonderful, wonderful day to go flying. And PEI is a beautiful place to fly, even in the winter, as you can see. And we're very happy to be able to share this with you. And if you know a general aviation pilot, or if you are one, and you're looking for a place to go, maybe this summer or in the fall, please think of Prince Edward Island. It's a very short hop across Northumberland Strait. You'll be warmly welcomed by our local pilot community, and there's lots to see and do on PEI. Thanks for watching.